he is a oh cool. Thank you, Paula. He is a senior education specialist at the Archives Libraries of New Zealand, ALNZ, and he's a specialist in New Zealand and Pacifica history, as well as the Treaty of Waitangi. So I really appreciate Tereora coming on. I think the work that he's doing is amazing, and I said to him, man, we need to have you on so you can kind of show off your work and then see how others might be able to kind of promote that within their own Pacifica community. So I want to hand that over to our brother Tereora.
Tēnā koe, Richard. Tēnā koe, everybody. Toia te waka tāpotu ki te moana. Mā wai e tō ki moana uri uri. Wai te moana. Tuatua te moana. Oru koe e whakatupuria te kawaora. Whakaura nuku, whakaura rangi. Whiti nuku, whiti rangi. Ka whakaura te haiata o te ata. Whakaura ai o ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama. And just at the outset, I thought I would recite a voyaging karakia that's related to some of the other stuff that I'll be talking about today. And just as a public service announcement, if Richard ever asks you to do a presentation and he says to you, oh, it's only to the Le Moana group, he's lying. He's lying. He's a liar, and you'll end up doing what we're doing today, which is presenting to all of LIANZA, which is a real privilege. It's a privilege, but also a little bit intimidating. So greetings to you all. I hope that wherever you are today, you are warm and that you are at peace. I have to admit to feeling a little bit intimidated for a number of reasons. Firstly, because I'm not really, I think I'm a little bit old school, but trying to be technically literate. I much prefer talanoa and face-to-face, and, breathing the same air. But also I realize that, online gives us the ability to connect with each other across larger distances, and it's often not possible to meet face-to-face. But I think we should always try to be in the same room with each other. Plus, I'm really used to presenting face to face because my jokes work much better face to face. They don't work on webinars, so I'm going to try and not terrorize you with my terrible dad jokes, if that's all right. The other reasons, I guess, I just wanted to state that I'm not a librarian at all. I didn't come up through libraries. I came up through culture and heritage and the education circles. But I've been working for 7 years with the National Library alongside some of the most committed and smart and experienced people that I've ever worked with. And when I first arrived, I felt like a fish out of water because everyone around me read books, knew lots about books, and was very much part of the DNA of the library. And I felt for many years very, very out of water because I was used to being around other historians and people that like to present themselves as historians, including myself. But one of the privileges of the last 7 years has been working with those people and have reminded me actually of what it was like growing up with a mother who was a teacher but read to me every night. And bizarrely, when I tell this story, people kind of look at me like, what was your mother on? Because she was reading me the Odyssey, oddly enough, when I was about 7 or 8. And I don't remember it being hard to listen to. Maybe she was reading me the Golden Books version of the Odyssey, but I was just enthralled with the stories of heroism of these fantastical creatures and this great journey. So maybe it was her that created the interest in stories within me. And what I found is actually librarians aren't just people that are interested in books for books' sake, but they are lovers of stories. So then I started to feel at home. The other caution I have today is I think I carry a little bit of, like most of us, a bit of imposter syndrome. when you become knowledgeable over the years about a topic, it actually becomes more apparent to you how much you don't know and how much there is still to learn. And if anything, I'm still a student in the field of waka, voyaging and wayfinding. I'm not a navigator. I've been around some amazing navigators and I've observed keenly. So maybe some of those things might be I might be able to share today. The other thing is that I've been incredibly privileged because I was a late starter in my 20s and went off to varsity and grew up in a fairly middle-class Palangi society with very little contact with my island heritage. I'm a descendant of the Ngāti Uritaua and Anutua clans of the Te Moana-nui-a-Kiwa district of Rarotonga. But I didn't have contact with my Cook Islands family till I was about 21. So by that stage, you kind of have formed much of who you are. But since then, I've had the privilege of being able to connect with my family and through waka, mostly. I started paddling waka ama. Then the person I was paddling waka ama with was very interested in voyaging. And I'll talk about that a bit later. But then I got opportunities and the chance to experience stuff, but also the chance to graciously make mistakes, of which I'm still making. So yeah. So what I thought I would do is, if that's all right, if everyone's okay, I thought I would start just my presentation. And it's, I haven't scripted this, but I've put together hopefully a flow of slides that kind of tell a story about things. So it's just called Waka Moana, and ngā tapawai a Maui I Te Moana-nui-a-Kiwa means just the footprints of Maui across our great ocean. If you look at a map of the Pacific Ocean, it actually is weird because a flat map doesn't really give the size and the proportion of the Pacific Ocean to the eye. What you have to do is you have to find a globe. And if you get a chance, or if you're near a globe sometime in your life, have a look at the size of the Pacific Ocean in relative terms to other parts of the world, the great continents and the other oceans like the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean. It's massive. It's like a third of the world's surface. But when you look at it on a flat map, it looks like a quarter or even smaller at times. And they enlarge the countries, almost Australia, almost like it looks like it fits in, half of the Pacific Ocean, and that's not a reality. So we're dealing with the world's largest ocean and some of the most far-flung islands in the world. So I'm just going to share that because I don't think I am sharing that. My apologies. Here we go. Cool. And I'm just going to try and flick through this, and hopefully these are our people. These are our Pacific people. The Polynesians aren't the only people in Oceania, but today we're going to be centering on the Polynesians, only because that's kind of my field of interest. Although I fully acknowledge that the tuakana that came before the Polynesians we now call the Melanesian area and the Micronesians. And we are actually, without those differentiations and geographical boundaries, actually might consider ourselves as one oceanic people because of the movement of people, which we'll get to in a second. But commonly today, I think this is how the world sees us. I don't know if you've seen this documentary. That's another one of my jokes because I can't hear your reaction because you've all got your mics off, but usually that gets a lot of laughs. So if you could just imagine the laughter along with me, that would be great. It would help me out. Oh, thanks, Richard. Thank you for that. Is that triggered? It's probably a sample. You probably push a button that triggers that sample. But, Moana's an interesting phenomena. I remember sitting in the first Moana movie and, there were parts that were actually quite emotional. And I'm not sure if anyone else had that experience. and it was dark. And I remember sitting there, and there was some, there were some tears rolling down my face a couple of times. And it's kind of embarrassing. You're taking your kids to the movie, and you're sitting there, and they're going to enjoying the hang out of it, and you're sitting there, with dusty eyes. But I remember turning around and looking behind me, and there was about 20 other Maori and Pacific fathers, all hiding under their hats and rubbing their eyes at the same time. And then I realized actually something really important's going on here. And what it was is we were seeing our story somehow depicted, something of our story, something that connects with who we are on the screen. But there's also, this could become problematic if this is how the world continues to see us, and there's not more of our story. When I was at university, I was exposed to maps like this, and this really blew my mind that all of these people that settled the Pacific Ocean are somehow connected to a single, and there might be considered multiple stories actually connecting to a single story, the movement of people, as you can see at the top there in the little orange area, 5,000 years ago, out of Taiwan, beginning to move into the island, larger islands, and then smaller islands across the Pacific. And you'll see those regions are kind of assumed, but those are also those regions have some differentiation around language, but also share commonalities of culture. And there's various ones of us in our meeting today have connections to different parts of this story. And we often see ourselves through lenses of, being Māori from Aotearoa, being Māori from the Cook Islands, being Samoan, being Tongan, being Hawaiian, being Tahitian, being Niue, and whatever. But sometimes I wonder whether those differentiations actually can work against us. And today I'd like for us to talk about who we are to each other, and that we share this amazing story, a story that's been described as describing the greatest navigator race or civilization that's ever lived because of their achievements. So, yeah, and we could sit on this map for ages and discuss it. One of the things that I would like to just quickly point out to you is you'll see on the right-hand side of the map that little dotted line with a little question mark over it. That's because when this map was done about 20 or 30 years ago, they were still really umming and ahhing, and didn't have enough evidence to make it a solid line that there was contact between Polynesia and South America where that line is going to. Today, I suspect that line would be a lot more solid. We have some really strong evidence and indicators, both in terms of ethnobotany and the science of DNA linkages and things like that, that show there's some really strong connections between Polynesia and South America, of which one of the most glaring evidence is the kumara, the presence of the kumara back in the Pacific. I've entitled this photo "Spot the Pretender," and I'm not sure if you can see him, but he's actually in the middle, standing up with the striped shirt underneath a t-shirt. Now, this photo was taken on my first voyage, and the reason I'm putting that up there is not to go, look at me, I'm the great voyager. It's that this was my first experience of voyaging on a waka, and this was on Te Aurere, a waka built by Tā Hekinukumai Busby, a famous waka builder, and he built this waka way back in the late 80s and early 90s. And I got a chance to do a short voyage from Waitangi in the Bay of Islands to Tauranga, and you can see my mate there lying on his hammock, and he's doing the thumbs up. Behind me is a famous navigator, New Zealand navigator called Jack Thatcher, and Jack, he looks like he's asleep, but actually, for the 4 days that we were traveling, sailing on the ocean, that's exactly where Jack sat the entire time. He only got off there to go to the toilet sometimes or to eat some food, but that's where he sat the whole time. And I couldn't believe it as I was watching him. He would be awake most of that 4 days, but now and then he would drop his head and he would sleep for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I guess experiences like this kind of really help me understand the amazingness of this tradition of wayfinding and of sailing. I've called it Spot the Pretender because actually I'm pretending that I know what I'm doing. I'm actually just following orders and learning and making mistakes and being tolerated mostly because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd been on the ocean a lot. I'd sailed and surfed and swam, but this was a totally different experience, but an amazing one. These are some of my mentors. The large picture is Hotu Barclay Kerr. I started paddling waka ama with him, and I would spend a lot of time with Hotu, hanging around, listening, learning, and just being part of that circle. The other person at the top there, the autograph, the black and white photo, is Sir Tom Davis, who's my uncle. He was second Prime Minister of the Cook Islands after independence, after Geoffrey Henry, and also a 3-star general in NASA. Tom Davis did the experiments on monkeys as they went to and came back from space before they put humans into space. He was part of that program. And underneath that is my Cook Islands mentor, Michael Tavioni, and his wife, Awhitea, who is one of the few waka builders. She is one of the few women waka builders in the Pacific, although I think there are more and more starting to train to build waka. But I learned a great deal from them. The other person who looms large in modern voyaging traditions today is Mao Pielo, Papa Mao, they call him. He's from Micronesia, from the island of Satawal. In the picture you can see up the top there, he's standing with Nainoa Thompson, a Hawaiian man who wanted to revive Polynesian voyaging and has been instrumental in that. And Nainoa went to there were 5 people in the Pacific, five men who knew the old ancient art of wayfinding without instruments, using the stars, using ocean currents, watching birds and clouds and things like that. And Nainoa went to 4 of them, and they all said no, they wouldn't teach him. And Papa Mao was the 5th and said he would teach them. He's legendary for his skills. He's passed now, but without this Micronesian man, we wouldn't have any of the knowledge that we have today. Papa Mao, when he was growing up, when he was young, his grandfather taught him to navigate, chose him when he was really young, and would take him on voyages, little voyages between islands, overnight voyages, and to get rid of his seasickness and his fear of sharks, would actually drag him tied to a rope behind the canoe as he sailed, which is a pretty brutal way of. I mean, I don't think that would fly in the education system today, but or any system, but that's how he grew up, and learning the stars from his grandfather. An amazing man. So the achievements and feats of these old navigators and our ancestors, our kupuna, our tupuna, our tipuna, have always amazed me. I'm not a navigator, but I guess I see my role as trying to help people understand a little bit about this amazing history. We think that the first waka might have looked like this as people began to move off the mainlands into the ocean, and the first human beings that did that probably started with rudimentary technology, stone tools, and may have made something like this. We weren't there, we don't know, but we suspect the first efforts of crossing the water and going to other islands, seeing what was over on that island, probably started something like this. And as they got better and more advanced at what they did, maybe that raft started to take shape as they learnt about their environment, learnt about their tools and what was possible, and started to push ahead. And then, as they developed their tools and understanding how wood worked, maybe they developed this. Maybe they learnt to dig out trees and create this watertight, or at least a watertight vessel. Now, of course, if we were to go in the ocean, well, I'd do this on a lake. But as you get out in the ocean, obviously the surface of the ocean can be bumpy and a bit more challenging. So the people of Oceania invented something which doesn't take place anywhere else in the world, but is one of the things that is iconically from the Pacific, but also is a massive jump in technology from this. And it's this, the outrigger. Now, it may not look like much, but it's quite a massive jump in technological ability for these oceanic peoples. So going from this to this is changes everything about your ability to go on the ocean. Firstly, you create a stable platform, but then you can also go and do something like this. So this changes your ability to go beyond the reef. And I'll often talk to, when I'm working with young people in a school program, I'll often ask them, refer back to Moana and saying, what did Moana's dad not want her to do? And they'll often say, quite rightly, her dad didn't want her to go over the reef because it's much more of a challenge and much more dangerous. He was worried about how she would. He was worried because of his own experiences and the loss of his friend. But once you do this, you can do this. And of course, the stability provides you the possibility of putting a sail on. And then once you've got a sail on, your ability to then explore not only the islands on the horizon, but then to sail over the horizon, but also knowing that you have the speed or the ability to be able to move back if you don't find anything. That increases the range of exploration of these people, and they began to move further and further out. The other thing that we should also mention is that what drives this is success, social and cultural success, because often these voyages are underpinned by a need and a need to find new islands, new fishing grounds, and new islands that might be support gardening. And the reason behind that, we think, anthropologists believe, is because of successful societies. When societies are successful, people start having more babies. And more babies means more mouths to feed, and the increase over time of social hierarchy and the need to spread out, the need to find new places for a growing population. So that, alongside probably just wanderlust and adventuring mindset, fuels some of this exploration. And after a while, the outrigger grows and becomes, as you can see in the middle there, that's I think this is a tongiaki style waka, and it's a Pacific Lateen sail. And you can see that one of the hulls is shorter than the other. That's because the outrigger is starting to grow into a hull, and eventually it would become an equal hull. Now I'm giving you just, this is a linear story, but actually it probably wasn't linear at all. Probably there were experiments in different parts of the Pacific, the Moana, that where people did different things and were experimenting. They were using trial and error and observation and inquiry, figuring out what was the best way to cross the ocean, what was the safest way and the fastest way, but also what could transport whole families. So we have the emergence around between 1000 and 500 BC in Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa of these large double hull voyaging waka. And of course, there's an explosion of designs across Oceania, from Micronesia, Melanesia, all the way out to Hawaii, Tahiti, and probably even all the way out to Rapa Nui or Easter Island. And these are the vessels, the size that would have crossed from Easter Island all the way to South America and explored there. It's greater chance that Polynesians explored South America than the Kumaro was brought into the Pacific by South Americans. Greater chance that the Polynesians went there as opposed to the other way, where South Americans come into the Pacific and bring the Kumara, because they from what we can tell, they didn't have a sailing maritime tradition that enabled them to sail against the wind, to tack and do things like that. But they were on the ocean as well, probably closer to the mainland, as far as we can tell. So you have this amazing explosion of designs. Waka often had designs on their sails, so people in the ocean could read who people were, identify where waka might have come from at a distance, to see possibly whether they're cousins or the guy that stole your pigs or your wife. Possibly that chief, that naughty chief. We've all got them in our families. Don't lie. I've got them. So all of that arrives in Aotearoa. And if you imagine for a moment that some of these waka builders, with all of this knowledge and all of this skill, arrive into a land sometime around between 1012 to 1300 AD, and they discover in their first encounter with Aotearoa trees that are absolutely huge compared to the size of trees that might grow on the Cook Islands, Hawaii, even Hawaii. The koa tree in Hawaii doesn't grow as big as the kauri or the tōtara, from what I understand. And so you transfer that knowledge into Aotearoa, and something amazing happens. These large wakataua, or war canoes, as sometimes they're known. These are amazing feats of indigenous engineering, but they're often confused with voyaging waka. These might sail maybe, depending on the weather, they might go offshore for a time and be out in the ocean. They might go out to ships when the first Europeans arrived, but they're not blue water ocean-going vessels. They're ingeniously crafted to transport a large number of people, a large number of warriors, quietly up rivers, up harbors, to be able to, or to transport, to come upon an enemy, but also to transport large gatherings of people up those rivers as well, because they're narrow and they move very, very. I mean, if you've ever seen them paddled. I'm just going to quickly, because we're running out of time, I'm just going to try and move forward a little bit. But just wanted to pay respect and homage to those of us who are in the hui today, the webinar, who are of Māori descent. But the achievements of your tupuna are amazing. These are the most beautiful things, and a real privilege to stand next to them if you get a chance. For those of you who have been able to, they're amazing vessels and carry the mana of the hapu and the iwi that they reside in. I just want to quickly pivot to just a quick overview of wayfinding. Wayfinding, I remember becoming interested in navigation, Polynesian navigation, between about 30 years ago. And I didn't know much about it then, but I know a little bit more now. I didn't even know that the Polynesians had its own star compass. There are different compasses around the Pacific in different ways, devices that people used. But just to quickly explain to you the star compass that you're seeing in front of you, on the eastern side is where the sun rises and stars rise. And Polynesians believe that the stars slept during the day in houses, and you can see the names of the houses around the right-hand side of the compass circle. But if you look over, they're matched on the other side by exactly the same names. So what people believed is that stars would rise, say, in Manu, and they would travel across the sky and go to sleep in the same house. And then during the day, they would rise again in the east. So if you this is a way that people figured out which stars rose where, and underneath the track from east to west of a star through the sky, different islands would lie. So there's a star called Arcturus, I think it's called, which is the Hawaiian name for it is Hokulea, and that's the zenith star that passes directly over Hawaii. So navigators that were trying to find Hawaii from somewhere like Tahiti would know that that star at a particular time of year in the sky would be one that would pass over Hawaii. So when I was younger, I thought that navigation and Polynesian wayfinding was a mystical task, somehow magical or supernatural. But actually, the more I've learned, it's actually really practical, and based on observation and knowledge of the sky and the elements and other things. As far as I can tell, from the stuff that I've read, to actually travel, say, from Aotearoa to say the Cook Islands, which is the closest provisioning point for voyages from the Pacific to reach Aotearoa, to travel that way, you need to know about 12 different stars, and they need to be at a certain time of year for them to be in the sky. 12 different stars to be able to navigate all the way, because they're not moving fast, they're moving real slow, and so you need to know about that many to go for just that distance. But probably if you were a navigator that sails across all of the Pacific, you might know somewhere north of 100 different stars and what time of the year they rise and what islands sit underneath them. So navigators used the stars. They used the sun, obviously, to know where to determine east and west or their bearing. Certain clouds and can sometimes indicate land. So some of you will know that the story of Kupe's wife, Kuramarotini, determined that the long white cloud that she saw was a cloud that indicated land, and she yelled out, "He ao, he Aotearoa," thereby that's where that name comes from. It's not a recent name; it's a very, very old name with lots of kōrero and discussion around that. Whales and birds. Some birds live at sea, like the toroa, that albatross down in the bottom right-hand corner. But other birds, like this one on the bottom left, that's the red-tailed tropic bird, or the tawake. That's a sea-feeding bird, but it returns to the land every evening after feeding. And if you know what time, if you're obviously aware what time of day is, and you see a bird like this returning in a particular direction, there's a good chance that it's returning to its nest, and you can identify that there is possibly land in that direction. So these navigators knew about their environment, knew about bird life and sea life and how it behaved, and would use these signs to determine where land was and lay down islands in their voyaging tracks. The southern humpback whale, which I've got a picture of there, they migrate north at a certain time of year to mate. Usually, I think one of their favourite spots is Tonga, closer up to Wawa'u. But if you're in the middle of the ocean and at a certain time of year you see whales heading north, or heading in a particular direction, usually they're heading north. So you can determine, even if there's no sun, or and the clouds are blocked out, and you can see whales at night too. You can hear them and figure out which way they're going. That's a way of being able to determine your direction and which way you're sailing. The tawake, has a really interesting story as well. It is known in Aotearoa as the amokura, and there's a number of songs about the amokura, the lament of the amokura. You can see that's red tail spine, navigational spine there. They don't live in Aotearoa, but often they will, now and then, they will often, not often, but they will wash up on the shores of New Zealand dead. They might have been lost in a storm. And the red tail there would become the property of rangatira. And there would be stories and songs sung about the sadness of the red-tailed tropic bird, or the amokura losing its way. It's a very special bird and a link between the Cook Islands and Aotearoa and the Pacific. For those of you who have ever been on the ocean, you will have seen, in the Pacific, you will have seen a strange fish with wings. That is obviously the flying fish, the maroro or the karoro. They taste beautiful, and they're the most beautiful thing to see in the ocean, because they often travel in schools of over 100 fish, up to 300. And if you're on a boat and you come across them, what they will do to escape is they come out of the water and can fly a couple of 100 meters across the surface, and that's how they escape their prey. But they're the most beautiful thing to see, and quite weird too if you've never seen one. I thought I would just introduce you, some of you who don't know about our voyaging waka. We built in 2000 and started in 2023, not long after COVID. Started a project at the National Library to build a 4-meter long voyaging waka. And the result is what I'm about to show you now. Whakaura is his name. Not all waka are male, but the person who named him was Papa Kura Moiahu of the Taranaki Te Aotearoa whānui down in Wellington. He is one of the most revered kaumātua of that area, and people in Wellington will know him well. We asked him to honour us and honour the waka by coming up with a name. And he found the voyaging karakia that I said at the start of today. And we began a process of finding someone to build this voyaging waka. And we managed to find a man called David Hakaraia. And David's the Deputy Head of School of the Victoria University's School of Design and Innovation. And he suggested that we 3D print the waka. I tell a little story about when I first saw the prototype of this waka, and it was white plastic, or this clear plastic. I was kind of a bit heartbroken, because I was expecting it to look like a wooden, a traditional waka made out of logs and timber, things like that. But David reminded me that I'd said to him that part of the project, all the voyaging societies that were actually sailing on the Pacific have, as part of their kaupapa, or as part of their value system, that they would get involved in the promotion and the well-being of the ocean and pollution. And I said, well, what's that got to do with us building a plastic waka? And he said, well, the waka is actually made out of 1,000 recycled Coke and pump bottles. And that's when I kind of began to fall in love with not only the concept, but also that actually something recycled plastic, with the technology that they were employing, could become something beautiful and translucent. So that's what happened. I will just go back a little bit. Those green pockets that you can see that we use to lash the waka together, they are recycled, retrieved from the ocean, dumped fishing nets. And to me, that's amazing, because if those were still floating in the ocean, they potentially, not only potentially wrapping around boat propellers, but actually, more importantly, they're not around the necks of albatross and turtles and fish, or dolphins. So we've been able to use modern technology, traditional thinking and context, to be able to create an answer for a contemporary problem, which I think is a message that is really important to our young people as well. So whakaura began to take shape, and over a period of months, about 8 months, the team in Wellington at the design school began constructing something that I, in my wildest dreams, had never conceived that it could be so amazing. And he began to emerge from all of these plans and ideas. You can see there our star compass. You can also see on the edge, this is the deck section that you can see in the other photo. On the edge of the deck, you can see those designs, those chevrons. Those are designed so that one day, when we get a chance, those could be augmented learning triggers. So students and teachers can pass over a device over those triggers, and mātauranga pages might pop up that help, that are linked to the waka or linked to learning about just about anything, actually. So hopefully one day that will be a reality. And here's a picture of the final result. This is whakaura as he was launched at the end of 2023, I think. I forget what year we're up to. It's like a bit of a blur. This is him at the National Library Auditorium in Wellington. And from that moment, when he arrived, special things began happening. And what I mean is people's reaction to him, the connection that he started to make with people. His voyage began in Wellington, but then he moved to Auckland. And as part of getting ready for launching the Waka Moana program as part of the He Tohu Tāmaki suite of school programs, we actually had a couple of development days where we invited other educators from around, specifically around Tāmaki Makaurau. We invited teachers, we invited educators from the Auckland Museum, from University of Auckland School of Education, the Maritime Museum, to help us determine the learning opportunities that come off this vessel, this replica, this taonga, I suppose. And that was really, really valuable. You can see sticky notes and pens, and we did quite a bit of work. And some of the stuff that came out was incredible, but also, we managed to identify some really rich learning opportunities that we could employ to expose to our young people. And then we began embarking upon, before we launched the program for schools. And one of the things that we were able to do is ask teachers to come and do professional development around the waka for themselves as a cohort of educators. so that they could get up close to the waka and learn how the waka goes together before they expose their young people to it. And the response to that has been mind-blowing, or really, really, it's a privilege to sit in some of those sessions, because every time we do this, teachers identify new opportunities that come off, and things that we didn't even think about. But the great thing is that when we actually turn up to a school, or a school comes into the National Library to do a program, different classes, the teachers are already onto it. They've already had a chance to learn how the waka goes together, to support their students with pre and post learning activities, which is kind of a bit of a game changer, because then the program isn't just on us, it's something that we share and collaborate with our partners as schools and other organisations as well. And I could show you thousands of pictures of classes. So far, Whakaura has had close to 6,000 Auckland school children around him, but also now school children in other districts, other areas around the motu. And I'll talk a little bit about the program in a minute, but this is a Samoan class from Kowhai Intermediate. They're still my favourite class, because I wasn't sure how much they knew about wha'a and how that related to Samoan culture. But boy, oh boy, did they decide that Whakaura belonged to them, and they were amazing around the waka. I often give classes a choice when we do a session, and adults as well. I say, I can teach you how to build this waka. You can choose that way, and I'll just teach you how to build it. Or if you choose the other way, I'll teach you how to become ko-moana, or sailors and wayfinders and voyagers. And they ask me often, what's the difference? And I say, well, if you choose to be wayfinders and sailors, I'm going to try and train you, or give you an experience that trains you to be a crew. And that means I'm going to push you harder. I'm going to have higher expectations of you, and I might be a little bit grumpy at times. And I've never had a class in all of that time say, oh no, we just want to be builders. Our young people actually, if you explain it to them, what's at stake, they are up for the challenges. And I'm amazed at them. I'm learning from them how much they are ready for the role of being wayfinders and leaders. They want to experience it. This is a picture of, the waka's just come back from 4 weeks in Wanganui, where he was housed at the Wanganui Museum. Oh, that's another picture. Here is Whakaura entering and being welcomed by the iwi and the staff of the museum and the community, council members in Wanganui, and it was a magical, magical day. But it gave us a chance to explore collaboration with regional partners. He was housed in the museum for that time, and during that time, I also handed the program over to their educators. So they took control of it, and I was there for a week, and then I left, and they did the next 3 weeks programming to schools. And that's a real joy for us as the National Library, as being a public service. Often we develop our stuff, and one of the challenges is connecting with the people who we've developed stuff for, our service. But this was an amazing learning opportunity for us, but also an amazing chance to collaborate with a regional partner, and the outcome was amazing. We had amazing community meetings and things like that, and talks and knowledge sharing. So the Pacific Island community came in and shared knowledge with tangata whenua and connections about waka that they knew about. Amazing. This is Kura tu ahi ahi. There is a second one now. This is Whakaura's sister, and she sits in the Auckland Maritime Museum, New Zealand Maritime Museum, and she is an educational tool down there. So there's now more than one, and I'm not sure if we're finished yet. I think we might end up having more. The photo that I showed you at the start of me on the waka, I mean, I had no idea 30 years ago that I would end up where I am today. I had to think when I was preparing for this webinar today as to what matters, why do I do what I do, and I think I'm just going to stop sharing this because I've written some things down that I'd like to finish with, and hopefully that will make sense. I don't even know if I'm still online, or we still online?
You're still going to what they're
Oh,
doing
cool.
also, bro.
Because I was looking at the PowerPoint, I didn't even know. I might have been speaking for the last 3/4 of an hour just to myself. I've just written some things down, if that's all right. What drives the program? I think we'd hoped at the outset that the program would help educate, but in truth, I think I'm looking for something else, and that something else is ignition. I believe that really relevant and great education and experiences help ignite something within people. And what I'm hoping to, what we hope to do with our programs is ignite something of the wayfinding navigators and adventurous spirit. And firstly, it was for our Māori and Pacific young people. I wanted them to acquire a sense of value and pride in our contribution as tangata moana, tangata Pacifica, tangata Māori to the wider human story. I wanted them to have a knowledge that our people contributed something amazing to the bigger human story. And I remember being a young boy with no idea that I'd descended from navigators in the distant and recent past. And I remember being enthralled by the Greeks, by the stories of Magellan, Vasco da Gama, and Nelson, and Cook. New Zealand's a village, and a large village, I think, filled with the descendants of navigators. We're an island. We're an island nation. So everyone who's come here has had to navigate in some way. It's interesting that the names of the new Cook Strait ferries are filled with some of our mythology, but maybe it suits the story we want to tell ourselves. Kupe for sure, but Cook, as I wonder about Tupai's contribution, it seems important, I would think. And what I've found, though, is that our young people are more ready to imagine themselves as navigators and leaders, as scientists and as discoverers of new frontiers, than sometimes we're ready to conceive of them as. Some of our young people, for them, their reefs and storms and unknowns are not out in the oceans. They're in their community, in their family, and in maybe the perception of an uncertain future. Hopefully, encountering the waka helps them discover tools that they can use to navigate whatever voyages they take. And the greatest one, of course, for all of us is the voyage that we take within us. And that requires, I think, has required for me and for many of my friends and colleagues, probably the greatest courage and bravery is to do the voyage inside, from the place you're stuck to the place that you need to go. And the last thing that I'd just like to say, because it's 2:00, is that if you feel lost and unsure of where you are headed, and there's a lot of us at this time in our history who feel that way, or which way you should go, then remember the voyages you've already taken. Remember the storms you've managed to survive, and maybe the days where the sun warmed your face and made things new. Because I think if we don't find relevance for these old and important stories in our lives today and the lives of our young people, then I'm not sure if we're really touching the true value of those things. So I'd just like to finish there and just say again, thank you to LIANZA, thank you to Le Moana, but also acknowledge the support and the backing of the National Library and Archives over the last few years, and the love and support of my very dear colleagues at the National Library and Archives. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Oh, Tereora, you probably are seeing all the hearts and all the clapping emojis that's come through because that was such an amazing presentation. I was thinking in my head, if I could just squeeze you, more information will come out than what you've given now. So, man, we really, really appreciate what you've done, Tereora. And like you said, it is 2 o'clock, people. We don't want to hold people back. I guess, CJ, there's a number of you online with you guys. So, kia ora to you guys. But me taki mata, Tereora. And I will just quickly close off with Te Talo, and then that's us, team. Te taifumata le atua ia te tatou manawa le alofa tūnō le tamā le atua ma le alofa Iesu Kiriso atua ma le mafuta whātasi o ngā pa ia. Amene. Cool, thank you, too. Look, if you have any questions, we'll make sure we'll get some details out to you, because there will probably be a lot of questions and a lot of requests now for Te Reora's presentation coming through to the city. So if you're going to pay for him, he's going to sail on Whakaura to come to you, and then, yeah, he'll see you then. But thank you, team. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the day. Ka kite.
Please, ka kite.